dinner with one of our guides. Sign up to be a Wild Earth Explorer before the end of February 2021, and you could be heading to Djuma, the place that we call home. Available dates are limited, so terms and conditions apply.
We stopped as the dusk was settling, and there was a zebra mare underneath the bush. She was lying down. We didn't really know what was happening, and then we saw it.
Everybody, there's a zebra giving birth there. There's a zebra giving birth. This is a zebra giving birth. Look at that. Look at that. Oh, you clever mare. Well done. It's born, everyone. It's born and it's alive and it looks fine.
This was, of course, an unusual sighting. Normally, herbivores like Impala and Wildebeest and zebra will give birth during the middle of the day. This is when their predators like lions and hyenas are fast asleep. But as this little foal took its first steps, the dying embers of the day had just gone over the western horizon, and it was just the time that the hyenas and lions were starting to get active and go out foraging. This is why we didn't light up the sighting, of course. It may have compromised the zebra's eyes and at the same time attracted those hyenas and lions to the activity.
My name is Lauren, and I'm currently working in Djuma Private Game Reserve here in South Africa. I love answering your questions during the live safaris. It's my favorite part. It feels like you're on the vehicle with me, and I'm able to teach you exactly what you want to know. If you want to ask a question on Wild Earth, then you need to register on our website. Once registered, you must go to the live safari page and ask your question below the live feed.
This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Well, as you can see, the sun is rising on another beautiful day in the northeastern part of South Africa, and we've been sitting here just watching the sun as it comes up over the green summer bush. It promises to be a spectacular day. We've got lots of good conditions. The clouds are separating, and so hopefully we'll have a good morning out here with lots and lots of animals. The plan is to head off roughly towards that sunset and then south from there, and to try and go and see if we can find any sign of our cats that we had yesterday morning, or afternoon should I say, in the form of Sibui and Tlalamba. Hopefully wherever you are, you're comfortable, strapped in, whether that be in bed, on a comfortable chair, or just generally, well, wherever you feel as comfortable as possible, and you're ready for this, your very own live African safari. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our sunrise safari. Seems quite apt to start with the sunrise. The sun is already quite high, actually. It's come up pretty quickly, but it was a beautiful, beautiful sunrise this morning. We had a big sun low on the horizon, and it just slowly came through a few of the clouds that are around and made for some beautiful light. My name is Tristan. On camera, I've got Impala this morning, and like I said, we're going to be heading southwards to try and see if we can follow up on our two spotty cats that were warring a little bit yesterday. Now, because we're heading there and because it's an interesting subject, hopefully all of you are going to have lots and lots of questions, and you can post any of those questions that you have on at FC for the YouTube chat stream, hashtag Wild Earth on Twitter, comments boxes on the various other streams and on the Wild Earth website. Now, the other bit of news that I have just before we get started as to kind of where we're going, exactly what we're going to be doing and how we're going to go about it, I just wanted to let a lot of you know, because I know a lot of you have been asking about any updates on Tingana. He was seen last night briefly, just leaving Djuma and going in towards Simbambili, and then apparently he turned south from there towards Arathusa. So he is around. I asked how he was looking. Apparently the words I got was he's looking like an absolute tank. So obviously Tingana's in some sort of good condition, and he's around, so hopefully we'll get a sign of him in the next couple of days. We know that he can travel quite long distances, but I'm looking forward to him kind of popping out. It's always a pleasure to see the old Duke and to spend time with him. Now, of course, I'm not going to be the only one out this morning. I obviously am the only one out on Djuma, but we'll have Pridelands and Ingala, and then hopefully if the rain settles down, Pinda will join us, and maybe Tswalu as well a little bit later. Apparently it's raining in Pinda, which is strange because a lot of the time the weather in Pinda is quite reflective of the weather that we're receiving, particularly if it's big frontal weather, you know, it's like cyclonic weather, then generally we get the same sort of systems, because actually Pinda, while it is far in terms of a north-south line, in terms of an east-west line, it's not that far at all. And a lot of those systems that kind of hit the coast often push up into this area, and so when they get rain, we might not get much rain here, but we'll get sort of cloudy, overcast conditions. And while we have had a bit of clouds this morning, they're separating and breaking apart pretty quickly, so hopefully that's going to be good news for Pinda, at least, for them to join us this morning. Right, now, like I say, the plan is to head south. I suspect, and I would be very surprised that both of these cats are there. I would imagine that they would have settled their dispute during the course of the night. But the plan is just to go to where the kill is to start with. We'll just check there. If there's any sign of the kill still in the tree, then we know that there's one of those leopards will still be around. If there's no sign of either of them, then we'll start to do a little loop around and basically just increase those loops until such time as you find tracks or the animal itself. So that's the plan and how to go about it. But before we kind of head off down that way, I'm sure a lot of you are curious, as I've just touched on the weather. So we'll take a look at the weather across our different locations this morning.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to And Beyond Ingala, where we're actually looking at a pod of hippos at a watering hole, and it is quite a lovely morning this morning. It's nice and cool, some overcast clouds, but it looks like it's going to be a nice cool morning. Lovely sounds waking up. There's some white-faced whistling ducks flying across. And the reason we came past the watering hole today is because this is where some of the members of the Pride with the White Lions were yesterday. We just wanted to come past here and see if there were any tracks in this area. Well, my name is Fred, and behind the camera we've got Odie. And I just actually want to take the opportunity to show a map to you. So just to give an idea roughly of where we are. So we're at this watering hole at the moment, and this is where the tracks of the lions have been, where we're going to be looking for them. A few of them have obviously moved closer to the river, but we were thinking our plan is to head from here closer to our boundary. There's some beautiful clearings in this area. We're also hoping to find some general game to look for this morning. And that's pretty much our plan. All right. Some other things that's quite interesting, on the other side of the bank there's some Guinea Fowl, and it is interesting to note how a scene at the watering hole like this can change every day. This is the first time in a long while where I've actually first thing in the morning see some Guinea Fowl here. Obviously they also want to come for a drink. But that also will change as the year continues, because at the current time we've got a lot of water with the rain we had the last few weeks. Most of the big watering holes are full, but also the landscape, all the little depressions and mud wallows and little pans are all full. So there is actually a lot of water for most of the animals out here. And then you got those white-faced whistling ducks. I just want to take my binoculars, but you can actually see the beautiful white faces. Timothy is just asking how many watering holes we have. So currently we've got 3 watering holes, 3 large ones that generally have water throughout the year. This one being about a medium-sized one, probably the second largest one we have. This watering hole is called Clara Dam. And then we have some other seasonal pans that normally at this time would be full. Probably about 4 or 5 of those ones that are filled up with the rain. So we're just wiping on the lens there. But like I said, it was quite a misty morning. So those ones will dry up as we generally go into winter. But for the rest of the year, those 3 watering holes, the main ones, actually should have enough water. Especially this one here, which is close to our boundary. If you know, it's next to huge open spaces where there actually isn't other water. So in the winter times, this is a great place for big herds of buffalo to come through for a drink. Let's see what else we got. Right. So I don't know if you all heard the call of that hippo there, but that is my favorite sound when I'm next to water. Jocelyn was asking a question if there are crocodiles at this watering hole. At the moment, there's none that we're aware of. The reason being, Jocelyn, that this watering hole a couple of years ago when we had a big drought actually did dry up completely. And so generally crocodiles would want to stay in watering holes that are more permanent water, or other river systems. But that doesn't mean that you can trust any water out here. I was speaking to one of the trackers, and he's been working here for 23 years. And there's a little drainage line close to where we are that leads towards this watering hole. And we had one a couple of years ago, massive rains, and it actually started flooding. And he said he saw a massive crocodile in that drainage line heading towards this area. So it just shows you that crocodiles can move essentially anywhere they want. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the future we come here and we just find that they have, crocodile has moved in here. But as it stands now, we haven't seen crocodiles in here for quite some time. So, there's a nice little group of Egyptian geese there as well. And that's actually a little family of them. You can see there's a slight size difference where the little goslings have actually grown very, very nicely. They're probably a couple of weeks old by now. They have been growing very, very fast. I'm trying to think when was the first time I saw them. I think it was around December, around mid-December. They were still tiny. I just want to see some. Where are you looking, Eddie? Mandisa, if I got your question correctly, you're asking why do ducks always swim in a pattern? I think if I understand correctly, pattern, you're referring to the always together. For these ones, it's mainly just because they are a little family group, and those little young ones are keeping close to the parents. Those parents don't want to leave them, by themselves or going off too far. And I think it's also a safety thing for them. I think they also feel, like I said, safe with each other. But linked to our previous question with crocodiles, and that is one of the reasons. If there were crocodiles in a pan like this, it has happened before where crocodiles just go under the water and they can go up and actually grab a goose or a duck swimming like that. And so that's one of the reasons why I think the parent geese actually don't want the younger ones sort of going off by themselves. They want them to follow them into areas where they feel it is at least safe and they can keep an eye on all of them. I would say that's probably the biggest reason for them swimming in a pattern like that. Actually, something else just caught my eye. Oh, and you see at the top of that tree on the right, looks like there's a pair of Wahlberg eagles. You see them there? Yeah, on the top of that marula tree. You can see it looks just like one, but when I look with my binoculars, you can actually see there's two of them. And so that is a breeding pair of Wahlberg eagles that we have close to this watering hole. And you can see, if you look carefully, the one on the right is actually a bit more paler. So that's the pale morph of the Wahlberg eagle. This particular eagle species has got quite a wide variety of colors that you ever find in them every now and then. The dark one, the sort of brown, and then the pale. And that pale morph is mainly just caused, it's a genetic thing. It's similar to blonde hair in humans and having brown hair. It just seems that in this particular eagle species that variation just occurs a lot more frequently, I'd say. But what actually causes it, apart from the genetics, I don't know if there's a real reason for that. But it's very nice to have this breeding pair here. Out there, someone just flew off. Now they are migrating eagles. They arrived, they're the second one going. They're actually now flying in the direction of where their nest is. And there's some white-faced whistling ducks as well. There he goes. And these ones, like I said, they arrived around August, September of last year. And once they finish breeding, around April, May, then they'll start heading further back up north in Africa, where they'll spend most of that time there during our winter. All right, but it has been quite a lovely morning here at the water. And it's amazing if you spend a little time and you listen and you look, you see how much is actually going on here. The hippos are swimming around, there's ducks and geese. But I think what we might do is just sit here and absorb it for another minute or so and listen what's going to happen, and then we might continue with our search further east and see what else we can find.
February is the month of love, and nature is no exception. Tristan and Trishala will be igniting the flame to discuss the bonds formed in the African wild. Sign up to become an explorer and join them by the fire on Sunday, the 28th of February. Wild Earth Explorers. It's in your nature.
Converging game path will invariably lead you to a water source, but treat all water as suspect. One of my favorite ways of purifying water is to filter out the particulates. And by just filtering it through your sock, you can clear out most of those. You can put water into a snail shell and you can boil it over a fire or using a chemical like chlorine or colloidal silver.
My name is Steve, and one of my favorite things at Wild Earth is getting questions from you. The type of questions that I really like are those ones that really help us to unpack and understand and really integrate the ecological knowledge and fully appreciate the importance that animals such as these Cape buffalo bring to the ecosystem. If you want to ask a question on Wild Earth, you're going to have to register on the website. But once registered, just head on over to the live safari page and enter your question under the live feed.
Look at this, the little one is up and about. Certainly hasn't had enough milk at this age. No amount of milk is enough. Oh, Corky. Too sweet. Oh, look at this. That is stunning.
Tune into Wild Earth every single day. It's in your nature.
What makes Anby on Pinder Private Game Reserve so special is our massive array of habitats. And with that comes, of course, a beautiful diversity of landscapes, but also an incredible biodiversity in terms of plants, bird life and animal life, as well as, of course, our conservation success stories with cheetah, with rhinos, now with pangolins too.
Catch up with the guides daily here on Wild Earth.
Right, well, we've just moved away from the watering hole, and as we stopped, there was a huge flock of European bee-eaters that just left this tree, did a bit of a circle, and they did that very characteristic call. I don't know if you can see some of them. So I hope that you picked up that sound. But that was really, really nice. And also there in the front, looks like there's a single male impala lying next to the road. And there's a red-billed oxpecker sitting on them as well. I might just go a little bit forward just to get a view of that impala. It's quite interesting with the oxpeckers on their back. Just going to go nice and slowly as to not disturb them. Anyway, he got up. No. Which ones? Okay, so I don't see those bee eaters at the moment. I have one up there. Let's going to try and see if we can get a view of them. See them sitting on top of that tree. So just to comment quickly on that impala, it looks like he has got another male with him. And partly that behavior of us even just slowly driving past and them getting up, when they are alone, they tend to be a bit more nervous, which is one of the reasons why they came down to this clearing, just so they can feel a bit more safe. I think he just wanted to move off. Okay, now I'm just looking at with my binoculars at those bee-eaters. Geez, there are quite a few of them there. It's almost like tree decorations at the moment. Just watching them fly off there. So Harvey is asking if the bee-eaters live close to a beehive. I think for them, if they knew that there was a beehive, they probably would be in that area. But generally, from where they roost and nest, they just know exactly where to forage to look for bees. And you'll find that, especially it's even close to watering holes, obviously bees also have to go and drink where there is some moisture. And so the bee-eaters don't have to specifically find a beehive. They just know where to forage for them to look. Because bees also during the day, they go out. They're not always at the hive. They're looking for pollen and nectar, and they're moving around, to different plants. And it's during those times where the bee-eaters will actually be feeding on them. There's some of them still on that tree, and I don't know if you can see, but it's quite, that characteristic blue belly, and then that yellow on the throat. And you can see a very, very thin and pinch-like little beak, which is what they use to very accurately fly and catch those bees when they are hunting. It's also nice just to sit early in the morning and to try and listen what other calls you can hear. Sometimes when you sit like this, you'll either hear a tree branch breaking, elephants are moving into the area. You might hear the roar of a lion, which can indicate where you want to go looking for them. We haven't found any tracks just yet. But also just we call this the dawn chorus. It's the early morning, all the birds are starting to call, and you can hear essentially the bush waking up, which is lovely, really. Yes, you can just see the rays of the sun breaking the cloud there. Right, but I think from here we are going to continue going further east and see if we can find either tracks of the lions or some general game in those clearings. Alright, so Billy was asking if kingfishers are related to bee-eaters. No, they are not, but they do look similar, I must say. So they are two groups completely. You've got a few different kingfisher species here, as well as you have different species of bee-eaters. But I must say, they do look similar sometimes in terms of color. But you'll also find that a kingfisher actually has a more robust beak, and where the bee-eaters have got actually very, very thin little beak. This saw on the road looks like there's some hyena tracks, but it does look like it's most likely from the night. So the hyenas will easily come here most evenings when they walk on the road, because the roads for them is the path of least resistance. It is easy for them to walk, and then obviously they'll smell and see if they can find any food during the night. But like I said, we're going to continue heading towards those clearings in the beautiful area in the east of the reserve. In the meantime, we're going to send you over to Steve for hello.
Good morning, good with the dawn. Yeah, eco training Pridelands, where the dawn chorus is out and about, and well, so my name is Steve Folkowitz, joined by Johan on camera, and as always, I'm very excited to be with you on this nice 22 degrees Celsius morning, 76 degrees Celsius Fahrenheit. 76 Celsius, I think we'd melt. So it is an early morning, it is beautiful, and the birds are singing, and so I am just going to allow you to just listen to the wonderful area, and I love them early morning bird calls as well. A couple of red-billed hornbills calling before, now the rattling cisticola. It's just up a bit from that one, and you'll see it just up and right slightly. There he is. Such a loud noise for such a small bird. One of those commonly found little round jobs that we find in these areas, the rattling cisticola. The whole list of cisticolas in South Africa, and the birds to identify. The call makes it much easier. Please do feel free to send through any questions you might have about Pridelands this morning. We'd love to hear from you. Johan and I are going to just make our way into the area of Leopard Dam and see if we can pick up any fresh sign of the leopards that have been moving around. It's going to be a slow process, but in the process we're also going to look at some tracks and some birds. Well, we're going to send you back over to Fred and see how he's getting along on his morning search.
Alright, welcome back to And Beyond Ngala. We're still on our drive. And still just keeping our eyes and ears open for anything, really. You can see the mist is starting to clear as it starts to warm up a little bit. Ooh, there's a nice herd of impala. Let's just maybe try and get you in a nice position here. Get that. Quite a lot of curious faces looking at us at the moment. Nice big herd of impala. And you can see, compared to the little book, one of them just got a bit of a fright and ran off. I think they are exceptionally nervous in this area. I mean, you can see that the grass is long, the bush is thick, and we have got high densities of predators here, so they have to be alert and aware. But I also have found that if you do hear impalas alarming, it's not always that they've seen an actual predator. They think they've seen something. I once had them alarming in a very, very big way, and after investigating, it was actually a porcupine. It was walking through the grass, and they obviously looked at it, and it sounded strange, and it looked suspicious, so they all just flat out started alarming at a porcupine. But from their point of view, you probably understand it. It looks like they're hiding just behind some apple leaf trees that are starting to grow. You see also how they're feeding. Some heads are up. You can see some of them when they're feeding. Some heads are up, some heads are down. And so that's part of them just increasing that safety element of looking and listening. Yeah, on it. There's a beautiful tropical tent spider, the web there in the screen. You can actually see the structure of it, the design is actually very, very perfect. It's almost like a little bowl at the base, and then the actual strings go further up to the top. And it's a very unique design of these little spiders. And when you drive through the landscape, especially mornings like this where it's been dew from the night, you can see they stand out a lot actually. Okay, so a question from Andrew. If bachelor herds are normally smaller than the female herds, that will depend from group to group, because you do get female herds or normal herds that are actually not that big. Sometimes you only find a group of 10 impala with one male and a few females, where you can have a group of, more than that for a bachelor herd. So it does vary, but generally speaking, the herds with the females will be larger compared to that of the bachelor herds. But I've seen some pretty big bachelor herds of almost close to 40 or 50. And so it really, like I said, it depends from area to area. And in this little group here, you can see that there's obviously one dominant ram, which I've missed now, but there's a couple of other males also mixed in here. And you can see the ages, more or less, you can guess it by just looking at the size of the horns. These little young ones with little tiny little stumps, almost about a centimeter high. Those are the young males that were all born November, December last year. So these are the most recent lambs. And then the ones have got little more, almost like fingers sticking out. It's about a year old, and when the horns actually start pinching together, it's normally almost close to about 2 years. And so you can see the different age groups within a herd like this. And between 2 and 3 years, and a little bit older than that, you'll find at some stage when these young male impala actually become adults, they will leave a herd like this, and then they'll join the bachelor groups, because that's also still where they will spend time together, because for them also there is benefits to being together. There's safety in numbers, especially in a place like this. And then they'll stay in those bachelor groups, getting bigger and stronger, until eventually they're in a position where they can start to challenge existing dominant rams for their herds. And this is about to start. The peak of the rut is normally around April and May. And you can see the behavior of the impala starting to change. They are sort of lining up for the rutting season. And then, of course, when that happens, the victorious male will take over a herd like this for himself, secure it, make sure no other males come near his females, and then come November, December, there's little lambs all over the place. And that's pretty much the cycle of these impala. You see how curious these ones are on the edge coming close to us here. And also something that's catching my eyes, all these flicking tails. See, they're flicking and their ears are twitching. This time of year, there's a lot of insects and a lot of biting flies. Every now and then I actually get one of them on myself, and it's quite a proper bite when they do get you. And so you can see it is frustrating for them in an area like this. Obviously also walking through grass in this area, they do pick up a lot of ticks, but you don't often really see ticks on impala. One of the reasons being that they'll allo groom. They'll groom each other. It's very interesting. The lower teeth in their jaws is actually loose. So when they do go and they comb through their fur, they can actually get the parasites and the ticks off like that. And then they'll also will groom each other on those hard-to-reach places. So you'll see them often standing with their heads close to each other, and they'll groom each other on the heads and behind the ears, and they'll nibble the ears. And that's why you almost will never see ticks on an impala's ears, especially, except for the males in the rutting season, because they're all busy fighting and they don't have time to do a lot of this grooming. The tick loads of them actually increase, and so you do tend to see in the early parts of the year, as we start going into the rutting season, the tick loads on the impala rams are actually very, very high. And then that also then obviously contributes to their condition actually dropping a little bit, because they're focusing so much on fighting, they're not looking after themselves that much. Comparing that, if we ever get a chance maybe to see an Inyala, often with Inyala, their ears are covered in ticks. It's literally just like a whole bunch of them. The average lifespan of these impala, probably about between 12 and 15 years, roughly, I'd say. So that is now looking in a normal situation. But in an area like this, it does vary, because I doubt that most of the impala here will actually live their full lives. Just because of the reality of where we are, there is a lot of predators, and generally speaking, most of these impalas will at some stage in their life, due to predation, be, they'll die or be eaten before they reach that age. Look at how nice those little ones are jumping on the sides there. Okay, so this little playful group of impala hopping around in the grass, we're going to be leaving them, and we'll send you over to Tristan with some spots.
Indeed, we do have spots. So it's Tswalu that we're following at the moment. She was actually up the tree with the kill when we got here. No sign of Kalamba yet, but Tswalu heard a squirrel alarm call and she came straight down the tree and is now walking kind of northwards. So I wonder if she maybe heard something that we didn't and is kind of on her way to go and investigate. There's definitely still some meat left in the tree, so it's not like the carcass is done. But she all of a sudden just changed her entire kind of behavior. She was feeding nicely, heard the squirrel alarm call, and she's just come down the tree and gone straight kind of northwards to where that squirrel was alarming. You can see every now and then just turning to kind of scent mark, so she'll be making sure that she's marking this as her territory. Kalamba would have been doing all the same stuff as well. Now, Kalamba might be around, we don't know. She might just be hanging out somewhere here. We know yesterday when Trish had them in the morning, Kalamba was actually quite far. She came up towards these jackalberries that we're approaching now, and was moving around in this area. So that could be why Tswalu's kind of heading in this direction. This is all typical areas for Tswalu where I've seen her before. Even when she had the cubs with her, she used to walk all of this section that we're in now. She likes this little area where berries grow.
Acknowledgement. Welcome back to a hole in the tree, everybody, where we were just watching a little squirrel. We do apologize about any technical difficulties you might be experiencing. Dead tree over here is a beautiful habitat tree for many organisms, including that hornbill over there. The poor squirrel was just enjoying himself sitting on top of the branch, and as the hornbills arrived, it ran away thinking, oh, thinking there was a bird of prey on its way. We were just investigating a really big leadwood just before that had many birds going a little bit berserk around. There were some big cavities, some big holes. We were trying to investigate what was going on. Very likely a snake inside one of those holes, but we couldn't actually find anything. All the birds attacking it were cavity and nesting birds or hole nesting birds, such as hornbills and starlings. And they make that alarm call like sound that often is used by birders to get birds to come out, because they respond to that like that shushing sound. Birds come out to mob predators as a group. If they hear a bird alarm calling, they often arrive to come and give assistance, and often it can be quite an important sort of sign for us as well. Owls, birds of prey, snakes, mongooses are found as well. JP, I haven't, not yet. I'm sure I shall see some. They do range far and wide. I haven't even heard them, but oh, squirrel's coming back up on the right there. He's decided the threat has disappeared. He wants to come back out onto the top and be out on his log. I haven't seen the ground hornbills, but I am sure they will turn up at some point. They're not restricted in the reserves. They do range very large distances. Oh, hello, Mr. Squirrel. And they also make noises for birds of prey and snakes. To be honest, I don't personally find them very reliable. But I know many people will always say, "Squirrels alarm calling." When you're that small, you respond to anything. And he's responded to the hornbill again. A little bit of interspecies competition happening here, I wonder, for the best perch. I almost imagine that to be a seesaw, and them going up and down on either side. Can you see? There we go. Zazu just got a fright for himself this time. The squirrel's like, there, a bit of your own medicine. He's just above, just up. There we go. It's time for some stretches. I love watching squirrels in the early morning with their stretches, sometimes with their body hugging. Oh, I think there's a hole there. I think he's just gone up again. Oh. And you see how he responded? I just heard a squirrel alarm call behind me. The bird of prey alarm call, that high. And this individual is looking in that direction, responding to it very, very quickly. Birds of prey are probably the biggest threat to these little fellows. Obviously snakes and leopards as well, but I find the birds of prey very reliable. I wonder what Tristan thinks.
Well, we're getting to birds of prey now. We just got Tswalu right next to us, scent marking, sniffing. She's looking for Tlalamba, I think. She knows that there's another cat around this area. She keeps looking up in this jackalberry tree. There's no sign of Tlalamba in the jackalberry tree, and we would see her quite clearly. She's not exactly a small cat anymore. So Tswalu's just sniffing around, just trying to check where she could be. You see she's going to go behind us now. Looks like she's going to go back towards that kill. She's eaten a fair amount, judging by her tummy. Her tummy's gotten really big. And so it seems as though she had a good feed. I just want to see where she goes from here. She keeps just kind of sniffing and then cutting off. You see she's going back now again. It's as though she's figured out that there's a scent of Tlalamba here that she can then try and kind of follow. Viola, it depends on the sort of amount of rain that we get, really, and conditions. If it rains, then the scent mark is washed away pretty quickly and gone. But if it's kind of winter months, it can last for weeks, if not months. I don't think we fully understand just yet how much of that smell lasts and how long after leopards can pick it up. Remember that when it's territorial based, animals are moving all the time and remarking, and so that's quite tricky for us to measure whether that scent is strong or not for those leopards. We just have to watch by behavior. Unfortunately, she's gone into the Mulawati now, so there's not much I can do from here. As you can see down below here, the Mulawati is still flowing, which means that we can't actually drive in the Mulawati. It's pretty kind of soggy and waterlogged, so we'll have to just kind of chill out and see if she pops back up again. I suspect that she's going to cross back towards the kill. That's my initial kind of prediction, but maybe that won't be the case. Maybe she'll just kind of turn and come back up onto the road. I don't know. At the end of the day, difficult area to negotiate. We also have signal issues in this area, so it's really tricky to move around too much. All right, so I'm going to try and see if we can get another view and figure out where she's gone. Hopefully we'll have some success and she'll go stationary soon.
When on safari, there's nothing better than an evening spent under the stars chatting around a fire, with the sounds of the wild all around you. If you sign up to be a Wild Earth Explorer, you can build your own memories by joining our guides for regular fireside chats. Subscription payments can be made by PayPal, credit card, and now bank transfer. Wild Earth Explorers, it's in your nature.
Being a safari driver requires some serious multitasking ability. You've got to be able to talk, look at the road, steer, and occasionally get the vehicle into the right gear.
Do not crash into any trees. Oh, that's a dozy.
Just jump into the car and hope for the best, and you'll see where it takes you. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm surprised they're moving as fast as that didn't go well.
Who is the best driver? Well, me, of course, although some of the cam ops might disagree.
Hi, my name is Tristan Dix, and I am a guide here at Djuma Private Game Reserve for Wild Earth. We love connecting you to the African bush, and we always look forward to all of your questions. If you want to ask a question on Wild Earth, you'll need to register on the website. Once registered, go to our live safari page and submit a question below the live feed. Catch up with me on Wild Earth.
The croc is still holding another one there. It's holding from the hindquarters. I would really want. The wildebeest cross is trying. The croc is holding the tail. It's holding tight. Oh no. Goodness me. Lucky, lucky wildebeest. You have another day to live.
Expect the unexpected here on Wild Earth daily.
Hi, I'm Kyle, and I come to you live every day here from Tswalu Kalahari in South Africa. My favorite bird has to be the sociable weaver. The enormous nest that they create, their survival tactics to inhabit these harsh and unforgiving environments, and as well as their complex social arrangements is truly remarkable. And the interconnectedness with the ecosystem shows us that we are too.
Catch up with the guides daily here on Wild Earth.
Right, we have managed to find some ground hornbills that are not on the ground but in a tree, which is actually often early mornings where they prefer to be, especially when they're calling. And it was quite interesting when we were with the impalas. Myself and Owen actually could say just before we left there, we could hear them calling, and so we're actually very happy that we found them in the right area. You can see that one on the right busy just picking with his very, very large bill. But that call it's a very deep humming, boom, 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 that you can hear, and it travels far, especially here early mornings and the cool mornings. One of the things that does stand out, especially in the adults, there's one just flew off. You see the beautiful red faces, but look on the left, there's one, the one that just flew now. He doesn't have a red face yet, so that's a little chick. And the youngsters, once they leave the group, the nest, they'll stay with the adults, and they're constantly moving together, learning sort of where to feed, where to look for food, because they've now gone to the ground, and most likely what they're looking for now is they'll be walking around looking for insects, looking for snakes. So they actually specialize also in tortoises. And so you'll find that with that very, very big bill, they can very easily crack open and break even a little tortoise shell and get to the insides of that. And so that's essentially what they're looking for now. And that little chick will stay with them for sometimes up to a year before it actually, it's still learning to feed for the next six months to a year. But yeah, really, really, really nice to find them here. We've gone to the edge of the clearing and we haven't found any of the giraffe or wildebeest that we were hoping for. But we're going to turn around. Some of my colleagues have managed to find some tracks of a pride of lions close to the river. And I think what we're going to do is head in that direction to see what we can find. But just to show you how stunning is this view here on the eastern side, it actually forms a bit of a delta. If you go further into that area, it becomes almost like marshland. There's water lilies there, and it really is quite a pretty area. But because of the soils, you can't even get close to there with a vehicle. You'll get stuck completely. But it is really a stunning area. There's some impala there I see on some of the trees there, and then lots of knobthorn here. So very, very good place for giraffe with all these thorn trees. But in the meantime, while we are going to head towards the river, we're going to send you over to Steve with something really cute.
Well, thanks, Fred. We've found another beautiful tree, a beautiful old grandfather tree, everybody, a dead leadwood with a few more squirrels. And these dead leadwoods can stand for, some people say, over 100 years. The Afrikaans name is hardakool, which is hard wood, basically. Makes very, very good coals on the fire, although these trees are now protected by law. And you can see why in the Tonga tradition, whenever they walk past a giant leadwood, they always go makosi, makosi, which is giving respect to the ancestors, because a tree like this would have died and stood there still during their grandfather's time, their father's time, and then their time when they introduced the tree once again to their children. So they believe that their ancestors lived in these trees, and that is just the dead ones. So when they're alive, they stand for, or they can live for over 1,000 years. So that's many, many generations. So think about how many squirrels could have lived in that tree during that time. How many marula nuts could have been stored inside the little cavities? Plenty, plenty, plenty. And birds and insects. And vitally important. Why I say these trees and wood is protected is because of its potential to stand for so long. It creates habitat and breeding for many, many, many organisms. When we talk about habitat, habitat is not just an area, it is a place where animals eat, sleep, and breed. If you take away the breeding sites, it's why we've seen declines in the southern ground hornbill population, because their habitats and breeding sites are declining and being removed. So hardakool, the hard wood that this tree produces, is obviously a very choice firewood, but if it is a big log or a small log on the floor, it's still going to take many, many years for that to decompose. So you can imagine, if you watched my grass ecology discussion the night before last, you would notice how just the smallest little bit of shade on the ground has an influence for grass accumulation, for seed accumulation, for insect breeding, for shading, for water retention. So a tree, not just in its own ability to stand and produce habitat for organisms large like squirrels and birds, but for the microorganisms on the ground as well as insects. Savannah, I don't think that they would try. I think that would be very cheeky for a squirrel to steal another squirrel's food. But I suppose, people, we do like to put anthropomorphisms on most things, and it's possible you get some sneaky squirrels, but for the most part you'll get a male who's got a group of females in his little home, and I think that they try and respect that. These fellas can get quite aggressive, and they're very, very quick to sort each other out, although you don't often see massive big squirrel fights. Here we go. He's like, who's fighting who? Can you imagine a group of squirrels fighting each other? The battle of the squirrels, everybody, over marula nuts. I think they keep their distance. They're sort of territorial to a degree on their sort of tree in their small patch, but there is an enormous amount of overlap out here as they move through the landscape. But they have a very high nutrient requirement with their small body. There we go, it's found something to eat. Last night's dinner left here on the floor. The Mapani or tree squirrel, everybody. They are very funny, aren't they? Little friendly one in camp. I think they're still around. Very bitey. Those teeth are constantly biting. If you've seen a marula nut, you'll see how difficult it is to get the nuts out. You can actually hear one shouting in the background. You see, they're not responding to the on-the-ground predator call, but the that high-pitched one, they respond to very quickly. If I had the ability to make that call and I played it now, you'd see these fellows would disappear. But the time has arrived, Johan. Can you see it? This one has been sitting, waiting patiently in its favorite spot for the sun to emerge, and it's now going, oh yes, sunshine, warm up my furry body. Oh, sunglasses. In that moment when you're so excited to warm up, but you realize how bright the sun is. Sorry, Detective, it is a spectacular tree. I think these squirrels have picked a very, very good spot. A very good spot. There are plenty of them around. You get many of these dead leadwoods. We refer to them quite regularly as dead leadwoods due to the fact that something would have happened in the drainage line and the depression, and you would have had a drop in the water table at some point. Leadwoods are water dependent trees that indicate water, and where this one is, there's a couple as well. A nice long line along the drainage line here, and something would have happened, a drought or something at some point, and you would have had a mass die-off of these trees. And all the trees you can see around that are still living, probably none of them existed when these trees were actually big giants on the landscape. They probably weren't even there. All the trees probably would have died off due to some massive drought many, many years ago, and the dead leadwoods remain. All the other dead trees would have decomposed by now, and new ones in their place. So very, very interesting grandfather trees, and hence why Makosi is the general show of reverence and respect to a tree that has stood for a very long time and has seen the seasons change and has seen the waters drain from the earth and the skies open with rain. Can you imagine the grounding and stories that these trees would tell? Now, there's no better thing to see perched in a tree like this than a leopard, and it seems like Tristan is having a little bit more luck with that.
We are indeed. We left Tswalu just, one, because we lost her, two, because the signal there was so sketchy. It was just becoming harder and harder to try and actually get visuals of her and then keep her. So we came towards Chitwa and we bumped into, I think it's 3 of the Nkuhumas that are here. They've got a kill not too far from where we are right now. You can see how full they are. They've got big tummies, they're breathing heavily, and that's because of the amount of food that they've eaten. The kill, by the looks of it, is at the base of a marula, so part of me is feeling like maybe there might even be a leopard around here. I know that there was tracks for Tundi moving into this area, apparently, and given where the proximity is to a marula tree, that would be typical of a leopard kind of pulling its kill towards the tree to hoist it, and maybe the lions went up and took it out, or they found it at the bottom there and have fed on it. I'll go down now to where I think the kill is, because I can see another lion in the distance at the base of the marula tree feeding, but look at the size of those bellies, absolutely huge. So whatever they've eaten, it had a bit of size to it. Maybe they just made their own kill and managed to get something like a waterbuck or a wildebeest or something like that. So while this one is passed out with its belly to the air, let's just go down to the one that looks like it's feeding and see if we can find out what they're actually eating and if it's, or how many lions we actually have here, because so far I've spotted 3 different individuals. It's these 2 behind me, and then the other 2, well, I mean, the other one is just down at the bottom here. Just gonna try and see. Priscilla, no, if these are the youngsters from the Nkuhuma Pride, they're not kicked out. You just probably find that they're struggling to find enough food in order to sustain themselves. Oh, it's so wet here, I can't actually get any closer than what we are, but I'm just trying to see. It looks like a bit of stomach content on the ground there. So this would be where the kill was. You can see it's kind of all flattened down there. Maybe a big Impala ram. It's possible that that's what it could have been. If it was something like a waterbuck or a wildebeest, there'd be still some sign of the carcass with only 3 lions here. But yeah, I don't think that they are in any way been chased out of the pride. I think it's just pressure of food more than anything else that breaks up these prides. Often you find when you've got lions that are in big groupings together, and we know the Nkuhuma Pride was getting very large at 16 lions. It's difficult to find food for that many mouths, and so what it does is it puts pressure on some of the individuals to start breaking away in order to try and find decent quality food. And so you often get these little splits of younger lions, or even the older lions sometimes split away from the youngsters themselves. They have the experience to know that it's time to go and try and find other things. This is definitely where the kill was, though. I mean, you can see how there's bits of bone and stuff that this lioness is picking up. There we go. I don't see any leopard in the tree, which is, I suppose, in one way good news. Means that we don't have to kind of stress that there's a poor leopard stuck up there, particularly if it was Marips and Tandi. You always have to worry when you've got lions around. You don't want them to get themselves into too much trouble. But it's very likely if it was an Impala. I mean, obviously these guys are capable of hunting on their own, but just the position of where this is would tell me that this is probably been brought down by a leopard and stolen. Often when you see it at the base of trees, you know that that's what's happened. But it'll be interesting. I want to just check in front here. Is that stomach content or is it just elephant dung? Maybe just stomach content in front. So it might have been dragged a little bit, this kill. Could very well have been. Maybe it was the lions, actually. Let's give them some credit. Let's say it was the lions that killed it. It's not like there's any sign of a leopard sitting in any of these trees around us. So we'll call it that it was the lions. We'll give them the credit for now. Interesting enough, is what's weird is I was talking about it yesterday with the Torchwood Pride, is how there's this massive overlap of lions at the moment. Where we are right now is pretty much where I had the Torchwoods yesterday evening. We're maybe about 200 meters from where I had them. They seemingly have gone all the way north into Buffelshoek. Somebody's tracking them now, kind of just steadily going north and slightly east. And there was audio for the Talamatis roaring coming from Buffelshoek this morning as well. So everybody's kind of in the same areas these days. And it's interesting to see how movement changes and affects where these guys go and what they actually end up doing. I wonder what this was. It must have been fairly large, though. I actually think it was the lions. The more I'm looking around us, the more I can see stomach content and drag marks and where they've been fighting over it. So I think it was probably them that killed this, not a leopard's kill. I take it back. As you said, this is your favorite pride. The Nkuhumas are very cool. I'm sad that we don't see them like we used to. We used to have really regular sightings of the Nkuhuma Pride. In fact, at one point during the drought of 2016, they lived on Djuma for a long period of time. I think it was something ridiculous, like 80 game drives we had the Nkuhumas. It's sad that we don't see them like we used to. They unfortunately have moved for a couple of reasons. One is that the sticks have kind of abandoned their old area. Two, the Birminghams moved south, which then created a vacuum and allowed the evokers to move further south. And given that they've got cubs with the evokers, it just makes sense that they follow wherever the boys are to stay safe. And so that's why we're seeing a dragging of the Nkuhumas away from our normal area. It is quite a common thing. It's not unusual for lion prides to adapt their territories. In my time in this part of the world, the prides of lions have changed quite dramatically. We used to see back in 2012, the landscape of lions here was very different. The Nkuhuma pride was a very, very, very big surprise up on the northern boundary of Buffelshoek, with most of their time spent in Manyeleti. Talamati pride was not even something we'd ever consider, and the Torchwoods, well, they were in and out very little. You didn't see much of them either. We used to see here the Styx pride, and if not the Styx, then we would get the breakaway Salalas, which was a tailless female and 4 youngsters, which are now the Mangan pride. Those 4 youngsters have formed the Mangans. So those were the kind of lions that we actually saw here. We never really, and then the 4-ways pride in the far east to a degree as well, and the Salala pride itself. So those are the kind of prides that we saw, and I mean, none of those prides that I've just mentioned are really even in this area anymore at all. We've now gone a very different way, and have got the Nkuhumas, Torchwoods, Telematis being the predominant prides within the section. Alright, well, we'll sit with these guys for now. There's lots of squirrels alarm calling around. You never know, the crunching of bones might attract some attention of something else. You never know how many lions are actually here. Could be others that are sleeping, so we'll just give it a bit of time. In the meantime, we'll send you to Fred with something with flapping ears.
Flapping ears indeed. Yeah, we decided to come drive past this bank of the river and come across this single elephant bull. Seems to be just been feeding on grass this morning. And yeah, you can very, very nicely actually see those ears, especially from the back. One thing that stands out is all those veins. You can really see that very nicely. Looks like an older elephant, but his tusks aren't very, very big. And I'm just trying to see. Looks like the left tusk is worn a little bit more, so it could be that he's been using that one more than the other one. Elephants, like we humans are left or right-handed elephants, will use one particular tusk more than the other one, and they'll use the tusk especially if they're walking up to a tree, and they'll push and try and break the bark off, and so they use it like a tool for feeding, essentially. But currently, with him feeding grass here, he doesn't need the tusks too much. And you can hear him ripping it out there. Often what you'll see him do is he's got the grass, he'll actually shake it and rub it against his chin and his belly between the front legs to sort of just knock the ground and the dust and the sand off the roots of the grass, because he doesn't want that to go into his mouth, because that'll actually just put more wear and tear on his molars. It's actually a very a light color, this elephant. If he were to have been swimming in the river and washed himself, you'll see it's actually a very, very dark color. So that light color that we're seeing on him is actually just mud that he's been covering himself with probably yesterday and the days before, and that mud has just dried on him. And as he's been walking and rubbing on trees, eventually it just scrapes, and it makes that light color on his back. Also looks like he's lost half of the hair in his tail, just the one half. I don't know how well you can see on the camera, but the hairs on that tail is actually very, very, very thick and strong. And you can almost imagine it's the same consistency as a very, very thick and strong fishing line. For those of you that have gone fishing before, it has the same texture to it. Archie is asking why elephant bulls always solitary. For the most of the time they are solitary, but the reason being is if we take this elephant for instance, he most probably was kicked out of the herd around 12 to 14 years of age, which is normally when the young males start becoming mature. And then they leave the herd and then they start their solitary life, either joining up with other bulls, and those young ones might spend time around very, very older bulls. And they'll be alone for the majority of life. Only when they become mature will they really then join up with the herd again to look for females to mate with. And so you'll find that an elephant bull like him, if he goes into must, which is high levels of testosterone, he will then specifically be looking for female elephants that are in estrus. And he'll often, just like walking through the bush like this, if he comes across a point where the elephant herd has moved through, and he'll actually go to a spot and he'll smell the urine with his trunk, and that's how he can determine if they are in estrus. And you'll find that then he literally has a mission, and then he'll follow specifically that herd because he's got one thing in mind and he wants to mate. Where with other bulls in the same area, those bulls will then obviously fight for each other for mating rights. So even though they've got a very large home range, the bulls just all in this area will fit into a hierarchy, and they will determine who's the most dominant one by fighting with each other. So one thing you can see very nicely with the ears from the back, do you see how the top end of the ear almost folds backward, almost like it's making a little roof, potentially giving a little bit more shade to the ears. And you can see some of that dried mud that's behind the ears on the inside as well. Because what these elephants have been doing, and this elephant especially in the last few days, it's been very, very hot. And on these warm days, to cool themselves down, these elephants flap their ears a lot more than they normally do, because they pump their blood through their ears, and they can almost pump all their blood in like 20 minutes through their ears. And flapping the ears, it cools off the blood and the temperature in the blood. But when they specifically go to water, they'll splash their ears wet or throw mud on that, because as they continue flapping, that evaporative cooling just really cools them off. But we might sit here with him for a few more minutes and see what he gets up to.
February is the month of love, and nature is no exception. Tristan and Trishala will be igniting the flame to discuss the bonds formed in the African wild. Sign up to become an explorer and join them by the fire on Sunday, the 28th of February. Wild Earth Explorers. It's in your nature.
Sometimes love wants to make you sing. And sometimes love wants to make you bow and fan your wings to your bow. For the southern yellow-billed hornbill, these are signs that love is in the air. These birds are destined for a season of monogamy at least. Breeding pairs are in it for the survival of their chicks. But before love commences, the male needs to woo his valentine with food in the form of nuptial gifts.
I'm Nikki here at Ambion Ngala in South Africa. I love getting questions from viewers about all the small things within the environment and how it all is integrated with one another. If you want to ask me any questions, please simply register with the Wild Earth website, head across to the Live Safari page, and then post your questions there. I'm looking forward to chatting to you on my next Wild Earth drive.
Hello, Mama. Just checking us out, everybody. There's no aggression here. Very relaxed. A herd of elephants moving around your car like that is truly, truly magical.
Tune into Wild Earth every single day. It's in your nature.
My favorite animal is a leopard, purely because I just think they are just the epitome of feline grace and power, and the way they can move about in any environment and remain hidden until they want to be seen, I just find incredibly intoxicating, and they're amazingly beautiful.
Catch up with the guides daily here on Wild Earth.
We're still sitting with our lioness that's feeding, and we can get a better idea of what they're eating now because there's a leg that's being crunched. I'm going to keep quiet for a bit so you can hear the sound. Those of you a bit squeamish, probably a time to turn it down and not listen or look too much. You might just be able to hear the crunching. Unfortunately, there's another car that's going to come now, so it'll make a lot of noise and we probably won't hear too much. You might also have been hearing kind of a Franklin in the background. I'm sure that's the one that's alarming at the other two lions that were here that have moved off. They seem to have gone to go and seek shade, and I'm not surprised when you look at the size of their tummies. They definitely need to go and find a spot to go rest that off today. If the sun comes out, it's going to be wickedly hot for lions with full tummies. So I expect them to try and just find some shade and then just flop down and take it easy. It's a decent meal, like I say, it must have been a big, I think Impala, it might be a wildebeest. I can't see nicely the leg, and because it's all been dragged through the mud, it's difficult to actually see the color of the sort of skin on that leg. It looked as though it was a little bit lighter than a wildebeest, but I might be wrong. It might be a wildebeest. I would expect, though, with 3 lions, a wildebeest, to still see a rib cage, see a set of horns here. That's a big animal in comparison, whereas you can see this has been rendered down into virtually nothing. There's a few bones that she's busy chewing on, but other than that, we don't really see any sign of a carcass. So my gut tells me that it was an Impala, maybe a big Impala ram, and the horns are lying somewhere in the long grass. Maybe not, though. I don't know. I suppose it could have been a young waterbuck, so like a year-old waterbuck. Could have been one of those, a little female that didn't have horns. We know there are lots of waterbuck that hang around in this section, so that's also an option. Given how full the lions are, probably actually a better option. Something like an Impala ram between these 3 wouldn't actually go that far. It sounds like, we've seen now Kalamba sitting on an Impala ram for 4 days, and it's attracted Tswalu, and both cats are fed off it, and yet there's still more meat. But for 3 lions, they will destroy an Impala ram within 5-10 minutes. There's not going to be much left of that, whereas something like a waterbuck will have filled them up a lot more, and you'll find that they would be as rotund as what we're seeing just now. Well, it's not that they hunt and eat other predators. They are animals that are opportunistic and animals that are there to assert their dominance. And what that means is that they need to sometimes get rid of competition. So things like lions, hyenas, cheetah, they are not only competition for food, but also competition in the sense that they can be dangerous towards their offspring. And so inherently, all predators are not very tolerant of one another. And if lions can catch something like a leopard or a cheetah or a wild dog or a hyena, they will kill them. Most of the time, and in fact 99% of the time, they don't eat them. They just kill them and leave them and walk off. Every now and then, though, you will find a case where they eat a leopard or they eat a bit of a cheetah, and sometimes it's like the internal organs that they eat and then they leave the rest of the carcass. But most of the instances that I've seen, the carcass is pretty much just left the way it is. Hyenas are the ones that generally will clean it up. Lions themselves are not that fond of eating other predators. So it's not so much that they hunt them, but they will defend their territories, so to speak, from these other predators and make sure that they assert themselves as the dominant force within the area. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful lions, though, these sub-adults. I mean, they're not even sub-adults anymore. They are fully fledged adults. It'll be really nice to see when they all start breeding. So these 3 females hopefully will start to have little cubbies soon. It'll be very intriguing to see where these cubs are put. You know, historically, the Nkuhumas have really kind of raised cubs mostly, or given birth to cubs mostly on Djuma itself. But their lack of presence there now, I suspect that the cubs would be had to our south or to our west. So somewhere like Arathusa, Hofmans, Lugari vessels, any of those properties where they're spending a lot more time. Unless, of course, these 3 females start to push back up towards Djuma. Maybe they decide that they want to mate with the dark-maned male evoker as opposed to the other 2. We'll just have to wait, and time will tell as to where they have their cubs. And where they start to move around, because I think we are going to see a split of the pride. Same with the Talamatis. I'm almost sure there's going to be a Talamati split at some point. Just these numbers of lions and having to feed and make sure that you have that much in the way of food is really tricky, particularly in these summer months. You know, there's not a huge amount of prey animals that are big enough to sustain those prides. So we're not seeing thousands of giraffe, we're not seeing thousands of zebra, wildebeest or buffalo. And things like kudu, waterbuck, impalas, while they are decent meals, they're not meals that are going to sustain 16 lions, and that's without the males. You know, if you add the males in there, then you need buffalo and things like that regularly to keep those prides together. So I'm pretty sure we're going to see splits of both. That will be an interesting dynamic as to see where everybody ends up in terms of their kind of territories. Also, the tortured themselves, they split into 2, one with cubs and one set without. So it'll be interesting to see where they go as well. Looking over, yes, they do. So what they do, not the content itself, the stomach lining. So actually, if you look in the front of my car here, just on the sort of in front of where this lioness is here, just to the front left of the vehicle, is a muddy section. You'll actually see the stomach content that is lying in that muddy section. It's kind of spread out a little bit. It's a very compacted, fine grass. It doesn't look quite like dung. So you'll just see it there straight down. There's like patches of light-colored rumen, essentially. And those patches, you need to come down a little bit more and more. Down. To the left a little bit. There we go. So that stuff there that you see in amongst the grasses, that's all rumen. And this rumen is something that comes out of the stomach. And so what they do is they eat the stomach lining and they shake it, and all the rumen goes out. They're not interested in really feeding off the grass. And if you look from the left of that, there's another patch of it from the stomach content, and there's a few insects a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit more. There we go. So you can see that kind of wad of stuff in there. Here comes one of the lionesses. I think she's coming to sniff to see if there's anything left here. You also got a bit out of this, which is good. Very muddy in this area, though. You're going to drink from that puddle right there. It's awesome to see these guys again. It's crazy to think that we saw them, and many of you that were part of that journey, from tiny little babies that have overcome, you know, Birmingham's leaving, white muscle disease, droughts, and now into kind of the rains. It's really cool to see how they've developed and progressed as young little lions into big adult females now that are capable of doing a lot of damage and living their life pretty much as well as any other lion pride could. And it looks like they dragged it from there across the road. actually want to just check this drag mark quickly, just to see if it's a lion drag or if there's a leopard track in this. It's so hard here, it's difficult to tell, and vehicles have now gone over it. Looks like it was from the lions themselves. Just having a little drink of water, much like the other ones were. So I'm not going to go around her because we're not going to see much of her face anyway, so we're going to have to just look at her bottom for now. And then as she kind of walks, we'll follow her along to where hopefully where the other two have kind of flopped down. Unfortunately, we're right on the edge of Chitwa, we're on the boundary of Little Kalahari. So if she goes further to the west, we unfortunately won't be able to follow too much. It doesn't look like that's the case though. It looks like they're mostly heading kind of down the cut line. So we should be able to follow her for a while. But look how she's got her nose to the ground. You see how she's smelling? So she's trying to work out what's going on. And we've had this question a lot about, do lions track or do animals track using, the sight? And so no, that's not the answer. But you can see tracking is used by sense of smell. So they do track animals. These guys will track buffalo in a very similar way, or even something like a leopard if it's been dragging a kill. Same way, nose to the ground, and they just sniff big air, kind of deep breaths that take in lots of scent particles. They'll analyze that, and then they'll be able to figure it out. I mean, she's exactly on the money where she's walking now. She's literally step for step following the one lioness that walked there. You see, she'll sniff here and she'll realize, okay, wait, hang on, they've turned, they haven't gone this way just yet. Let's just recalculate, and then she'll go. Bridget, there's no chance right now. In future, pretty good, but right now, no chance. The Torchwoods have, like I said, their tracks, as I was saying earlier, went all the way into Buffalo's Hook. So we're kind of, they've put the whole of Djuma and Torchwood between themselves and these guys as the Torchwood Pride. So, like I said, the chances are pretty much zero of them bumping into each other today. But going forward, there's a very real possibility we can see the Torchwoods, Nkuhumas and Talamatis all bump into each other at some point. I suspect it's going to be in the drier winter months when we start to see an increase in buffalo numbers coming through. There's the other lioness there. Franklin just gave this lioness the fright of her life. It came bursting out next to her and she got a massive fright. You can see her nose is pretty good. It's led her straight to the other ones. So everybody is together right here on the edge of the cut line. We can't go any further. That's now into Little Kalahari where they are now. So I can't follow them, unfortunately. But nice while it lasted. At least we got a semi-decent view of these guys. They're going to lie down, I think, right here. They're not going to go far, but it's unfortunate with the grass being the length that it is, that even if they don't go far and they lie down very close, the visual that we'll have is going to be less than zero. The grass is just that long. And you can see as they lie down how it just disappears completely. Amazing camouflage. So I got to be a bit careful at the moment about when you're walking around as to what you do. I mean, yesterday, like I stood on those Tortured Pride basically because you just can't see anything, and I wasn't even trying to go far into the block, just trying to walk on a pathway, but it's so long just off the pathways that you got to be very, very careful at the moment when walking around. All right, I'm going to do just a loop around here just to check. You never know, maybe with all the commotion, a leopard is kind of in the area as well. These guys are going to flop down here, and so in the meantime, let's send you across to Fred, who's also on search for these tawny cats.
All right, so we've managed to eventually leave that elephant. He moved off the road into the river. so we could get past. We're still heading towards another section of the river, pretty close to where that lioness and the 3 youngsters were yesterday. One of the other vehicles had briefly see them go into the sandy part of the river and then up the bank into a bush. Now they've moved out of that area, that vehicle. Just always looking for tracks when I go through a drainage line. Just look like some hyena footprints. But I think what we're going to do is we're going to go to that spot where they last had them and spend some time there, just to see if we can't maybe see them coming out of that thicket. But while we continue to make our way towards the river, we're going to send you over to Steve with something really cool to show us.
Welcome back, everybody. Excuse me, there's no controlling a sneeze. Good morning and welcome. If you're a little bit of an arachnophobe, sorry for not warning you before, but look away now. Beautiful golden orb. And bottom right of the framing, you keep it just like that. Looks like a male, or that actually looks like a dewdrop spider living in the web. Now you get males living in the web with the big female at their own risk, and then you get a dewdrop spider which kind of looks like that. When in the right light, that back of the abdomen looks very much like a drop of water, and there's another one next to it which looks like the male. There we go, here comes another one. Living inside the web of a spider that size comes with some risks, everybody. They look like little blobs of mercury. Oh, there's a fight ensuing, everybody. There's a fight. Watch out. Spiders versus spiders. Oh, that one has won the battle. And spiders are so fascinating. Oh, there she goes. Now she's going to go and catch one. She's decided, okay, yeah, you want to mess around in my web? I will eat you. So you see how quickly she can move. That's why living in the web can be very dangerous to another spider, because, well, look at the size of her. And this is the golden orb web spider, female. Sonia, no, I wouldn't say the largest. We get probably one of the largest we find here in a web. We get the baboon spiders as well, which are on the ground. They are called mygalomorphs. This is probably one of the largest aranomorphs we'll find here. In South Africa, the golden orb and the garden orb are two of the largest. I'm trying to think if there might be a larger one, but the rain spiders we find all over South Africa are much bigger. They're quite scary. They're about the size of a hand. Many people get a bit upset when they see them, but they're perfectly harmless. They live in your house, and they come inside after the rain. We find them all over the southern parts of South Africa. I think even in Joburg they've been seen. I'm not sure. I can't remember now. I've lived so many places, I forget. Well, you've seen them in Pretoria. Thank you very much, Johan. So definitely in the high veld as well. But spiders aren't out to get you, everybody. They are pioneers. They move into an environment and they're sort of one of the first organisms to arrive, and then they set their traps and then they wait. So we can learn a lot from spiders. Patience and fortitude. She's doing a little bit of cleaning of her mandibles. I think she might have, almost as if she caught something. She moved so quickly. Incredible the way they're able to move on their own web. Everything else gets stuck. But spiders have got these especially adapted feet for walking. It really depends on the species, but as far as I'm aware, she does all the building of this web, and he lives, or a couple males live inside the web with her. The dewdrop spider lives in the web as well, and they just steal from them. But as far as I'm aware, all spiders are able to produce silk. That is one of the characteristic features of being a spider. That's why the sun spider, or the red Roman, is not classified as a spider due to the fact it has no venom glands or silk glands. But I believe all spiders are able to produce some form of silk. Obviously, there's different degrees and different sort of strengths and torsion degrees, I suppose. For example, the baboon spider just uses a little bit of silk to cover and surround the hole that they build or dig. They don't need to make all of these high tension webs. And there are different types of web, different types of anchor points. Some bits are stronger than others. And then there's much softer silk that's easily spun, easily used. Some spiders, like the bark spider, can build the web in the evening and then eat it all, consume it all by day. It's all protein based. Eat it and reabsorb it and then use it again later. Recycling at its best. I wish we could all learn something about that. So another reason why spiders are something to aspire to, everybody. Waste not, want not. They use their leftover food particles as a warning sign to other animals. Don't walk through here. You're going to damage my web. Or fly here at your own peril and I will eat you. The ability to recycle one's web. Can you imagine? Imagine all the fishing line in the world that people use and the fishing nets that are used around the world. Imagine all of them can be thrown in and then just recycled and eaten up again. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Wouldn't that eliminate enormous amounts of disaster that occurs around the world? Fishing line, fishing nets, plastic bottles. Whew. Sorry for that somber moment there, but we all need to face reality sometimes. Now, I don't think you're going to be able to get it, but there is a Jacobin cuckoo that has just landed in front of us, but it is really obscured. Oh, here comes a melanistic. You'll be able to get him? Please, can you get that bird up there? It just went up at 11 o'clock, top of the tree. Melanistic Jacobin cuckoo. There we go, middle of frame. Boom. Now, I say it's a Jacobin. They're hard to tell sometimes. Jacobin versus Le Valence. Le Valence has got stripes on the chest, and the Jacobin does not. And the one I was looking at before is a white-chested Jacobin cuckoo, and then this one joined it, which makes you think very easily that it must be the same species. And the Jacobin is also the more likely of the darker morphs. Well done, thank you, Johan. You just made my day. I saw some Jacobin cuckoos last year in Djuma of the dark morph kind. It's more common in the Eastern Cape. And then up here, so that's now 3 years in a row, I've seen a dark morph Jacobin cuckoo. And what a splendid sight it is indeed to see on this Thursday morning.
Hi, I'm Sue. I am from South Africa and I'm the incredibly lucky winner of the Tswalu competition. Tswalu has so much to offer, but we are really looking forward to the game viewing options, as going out with a personal guide who has so much knowledge will just be exceptional. Motsi Lodge looks absolutely amazing, and we're so looking forward to spending time there. It really is out of this world. I only registered as an explorer towards the end of January, so when the email arrived stating that I was the winner, it took me totally by surprise. I'd just like to thank Wild Earth and Tswalu for this most incredible prize. It really is a dream come true.
Wild Earth Explorers, it's in your nature.
Riverbeds are a great way to find water and look for places where elephant have excavated hollows. You can then dig into the sand, and after a couple of feet you should find damp sand, which then can be squeezed out or siphoned off for water. And with water being one of our scarcest resources, it is a good idea to conserve water where and how you can.
My name is Ross and I'm a field guide at and beyond Pinder Private Game Reserve. I love getting questions from guests on Wild Earth because I love sharing and learning information about nature with new people, and it also makes me feel like you're all joining me in real life. If you want to ask a question on Wild Earth, then you need to register on our website. Once registered, go to our live safari page and submit your question below our live feed.
Something very, very interesting. I didn't plan this, but this is a scene rarely seen. This is what we call a journey of giraffe. So beautiful.
Tune into Wild Earth every single day. It's in your nature.
Welcome back to And Beyond Ngala, where we've just gone through the riverbed to where they lost sight of that mother with the cubs. The tracks, we just saw them going into a very, very, very thick and big buffalo thorn bush, which is ideal for her, which is one of the reasons why the lionesses here in this part actually choose to den in the riverbed. It's got good cover for them, but it's also right in the center of the male's territory, which means it's also a very safe place to be denning and hiding the youngsters. So I think what we'll do, instead of waiting there, we'll continue further south to see if we can't find any signs of the rest of the pride, because there were tracks heading in that direction. And then later on the way back, we can always go have a look and see if she hasn't come out with them. But as I'm driving around here, I always like to look in these big trees, these big jackalberry trees. Oh, there's a little squirrel, tree squirrel. So we just got a little tree squirrel there on the left. He's trying to hide from us. So there was a question from Harriet, I think, of are we the only reserve with white lions? So I'll answer that now. I just want to have a look. Now that squirrel, he's moving around the tree. He doesn't want us to see him. And the answer is no, we're not the only ones. As the record stands, there are currently only 4 wild white lions, of which 2 are at Ngala. Then there's another 2 further in the Kruger National Park, on the eastern boundary of Kruger National Park. There's another male, quite a big one. I think he's over 4 years. And then there is, what was it? I think during last year, with an air census, another white young one was seen in another part of Kruger, but pretty much all not too far from here. So it seems that a core of the genetics that actually causes the white lions, that gene seems to be very strong in this part of the world. especially around the Timavati area. Nala's asking if we had any coalitions visiting the reserve recently. Not too recently that I'm aware of, but on occasion we do have other lions coming in here. With Ngala being an open system, meaning it doesn't have a fence around, it's open and part of the greater Kruger, lions can freely move in. We generally have about 5 different prides in and around Ngala, with the Birmingham Pride being pretty much the center of Ngala, which is the ones we see most often. But then being part of an open system like this, there's a lot of lions, especially new ones, that on occasion will come in. And last year there has been some activity. And I think at the beginning of the year, it seems like there are males wanting to move in, but none that I've seen, just from conversations with my colleagues. So we are expecting that in this year, there might be a change happening in this pride. In an area like Kruger, where the lion density is quite high, there is a lot of pressure on the lions. And so you'll find that on average, a male lion is only dominant in a territory for about, on average, 2 years. Now that does vary because the 2 dominant males of this pride are going on their 3rd year now, I believe. So that's why I said if there's no pressure coming from outside into here, then they can stay in for longer. But the moment new males start coming into this territory, where they've obviously left the area where they were born, moved out of that, they've been nomadic, but now they're looking for a pride, they're looking to take over a territory for themselves, then they will come here and chase out the existing males, the dominant ones, either by killing them or forcing them out of the area. And then those males will come and take over the pride. But like I said, I think don't know how soon it will be, but we're expecting that in this year there might be some changes happening if there are movement from other lions coming in. The question is, are lions still endangered in this area? The lions in the greater Kruger are definitely doing well. It's a good population. If you're talking about lion conservation throughout Africa, what are you seeing there? Sorry, oh, there's a long-tailed paradise. What have you got on there? Oh, okay. There he goes. How pretty is that? Look at that tail. That is a long-tailed paradise wider. And that long tail is part of its breeding plumage. So this is the time of year when they are busy breeding. And that's a male bird. Obviously trying to look very impressive for the females. So the females are lots... they don't have that long tail and they're more pale, dullish color. And interestingly enough, after the breeding season, then that tail will fall off and the male himself will actually change into a very more grey-brown color. But that is really pretty. Look at that black head with the yellow and some... was reddish on the chest, and quite an interesting tail that is indeed. I was actually talking to one of my colleagues the other day, we're saying it's obviously at some stage that tail has to fall off. But we've never ever managed to actually find one, because it will be quite a nice thing to pick up at some stage, because it is such a pretty feather. Seems to be some more bird activity in that tree. There was a little batters. Ooh, Timothy was asking what's my favorite bird. My favorite bird, I'd say, has to be the martial eagle, because for me it is the king of eagles. But I must say I love birds in general, and I like different birds for different reasons, really. And they are fascinating to watch. You watch the way they move around, and the way that they're looking for food, and the way that they build a nest, and the way they care for their young. And in a place like Ngala, where we've got close to 380 birds that's been recorded here, it really is, it's literally just a treasure chest full of beautiful and good things to explore. And you can hear how many different ones are calling at the moment. All right, well, I think let's leave this tree full of trees and we'll continue on our lion search. And then just to continue the question on the lion conservation and the endangered species in this area. So lions overall in Africa are mainly threatened by loss of habitat. So we've got to really make a concerted effort to make sure that we've got enough area and habitat for them. However, in this area, just to quickly show you, this has been a marula tree that's been pushed over by an elephant. And you can just imagine the power it takes to push over a tree like this. And so the reason an elephant would do this is mainly often they want to expose the roots of a tree because that's what they want to eat. It also helps them often get to the top of the canopy where there's some nice leaves and fresh branches that they can't reach. But it's mainly the elephant bulls that'll do that. You'll find that the herds and the females feed more gently, either just breaking smaller branches. So that most definitely was a bull elephant. And back to the initial question, the lions in this area, it's a very healthy population. I think the latest estimate roughly is that for the Greater Kruger, there's roughly about 1,700 lions, and it is a viable population, which is great. So if we can continue to keep these areas protected, the lions inside here will continue for generations to come, and that is what we want to achieve with conservation. We want to ensure that we've got healthy ecosystems and healthy populations of animals that can be sustained in those ecosystems and in those habitats. Saw Hornbill there. He flew off to the side. RD, have I ever seen two prides come together? I believe you mean in a conflicting way. On Ngala, no, I haven't seen that yet. But I have seen it where different prides have actually, at the boundaries of their territories, meet up together. And then normally it is quite a vicious fight, and eventually one of them will move off. And the reason being that those lions want to protect their territory, and they want to make sure that no other lions come in there. And it'll vary from area to area how severe that fight is. Sometimes it's just literally a visual confrontation. The lions will show each other, show themselves to one another, and they'll move away, not wanting any conflict. Or one particular group will full on go to challenge those ones, and then it normally will be a fight. But like I said, I haven't seen that on Ngala. Oh, there's a wildebeest up ahead. Let's go have a closer look. Just looks like one at the moment, but there is a bit of a clearing past that, where there might be a herd. You might even see some impalas there as well. Oh, now there I can start to see a few more. It's at least 2 or 3. Just approach them slowly as to not to spook them, and then we'll get a nice viewing position. Ah, there's the rest of the herd. So there's a herd here. I'm going to try these ones, Odie. How's that? I'll show you a view. Jackie was asking an interesting question of why wildebeest and impala are always together. Now, there are occasions where we don't find them together, but the reason that they are together on occasion is just because of a safety mechanism. For them, they're not really competing directly for the same food source. And so for those animals, it just makes sense to spend time together because it's safety in numbers. There's more eyes and ears to look and listen out for danger. And you'll often find, on Ngala specifically, where we have these areas of quite thick bush and then areas where there's nice clearings, they prefer to be in the clearings because it is easier for them to spot predators, and I think they feel a bit more, well, I think less vulnerable because something can't really sneak up on them. But we often find zebra, wildebeest, and impala together. And it's quite interesting because even though all of them eat plants, they do prefer different types of plants. So generally speaking, when those animals are together, you'll find the zebras will prefer the longer grasses and the more bulk grasses, being a bulk feeder, where the wildebeest will move in specifically focusing on some of the shorter grasses. And then impala, being quite a successful animal, they're a mixed feeder, so they can both browse and graze, which means they can eat grass and they can eat the leaves of trees. And so in that way, when there is enough food around, there's no real competition. And it's just really safety in numbers for them. You can see how nice they're all walking to the side there. Same thing, all these wildebeest, you can also just see shaking tails, twitching, biting their backs, biting flies are really bothering them. So there was a question, I think, from Hannah about how do the herbivores survive the winter season. The winter season, it depends from year to year. You find that some years, I'm just going to reposition for us a little bit, because they all seem to be behind that bush. Some winters are actually better than others. So a year like this year, where we've had a lot of rain and it's lush and you can see there's grass and the bush is looking really good, this will be a fantastic winter, because even when we go into the winter, it starts to dry. A lot of these plants still keep their nutrients, and the animals can continue feeding. There's enough grass for them throughout the winter period. As long as there's water and grass, they'll be fine. I just want to quickly get a nice view for us here. That's quite... How's that, Odie? All nice in a straight line. But if you have had a few years where there wasn't good rain, and you go into a winter where there actually isn't enough grass, that's when the animals really struggle. And generally the strongest genes will also only survive at that stage. It is also nature's way to control numbers in a natural way. Drought and different natural disasters. Even though for us it might be quite a disturbing thing, it's part of how nature functions. And in that way, like I said, the strong genes survive, and the weaker ones die out. But also, it's interesting, in those drought periods, the predators actually do a lot better, because it's very, very easy for them to find food. You'll often find that lions in the drier parts will actually spend time around watering holes, specifically just literally waiting for prey animals to come and drink. And obviously with all the animals that die because of the drought, the scavengers also have got a great time as well. So you have this constant fluctuation within an ecosystem, this up and down of animal populations, and the way that the habitat is changing constantly. From periods of lush green to droughts to floods, and we're only really now starting to understand how these ecosystems function. There was a very interesting observation that was made by some scientists in Kruger as well about how the last drought actually had a lot of positive effects. Some areas where there were, for instance, plants and grasses that weren't really good grasses and didn't have a lot of nutrients and weren't really that palatable, afterwards the grazing had increased, and there were better grasses that moved in. I think they mentioned that actually the wild dog population had increased partly because of that drought. It might have been that it was easier for them to get food. So all these different observations, we look at it in a snapshot in time, and we think, oh, this is bad, it's a drought, everything's going to die, when in actual fact that's not the case. These ecosystems function over thousands and thousands of years, and we only look at one single little segment. And the more we observe and the more we learn, the more we actually realize how nature is actually functioning, and it does certain things in a brilliant, brilliant way. All right, I'm just going to go a little bit forward again. I don't know how many have I seen so far. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Roughly about between 7 and 10, I think. It's all herd like this. Good. All right. Very similar to those impalas we had this morning. You see how alert these wildebeest are. Feeding every now and then heads up, scanning around, looking, listening. And the reason they do this is because the lions really like this area as well. Dango was asking, what is the purpose of a wildebeest beard? That's actually an interesting question. I have no idea. I'll see if I can maybe read up on it. There's nothing specifically that comes to mind. There might be a purpose for it, but not one that I can think of at the moment. But it is something that really stands out a lot, especially when they lift up that beard. You can see, it's quite a distinguishing factor for them. Right, but yeah, we are probably going to leave these wildebeest soon and continue heading into the direction where we think the pride might be, and see if we can't find them.
February is the month of love, and nature is no exception. Tristan and Trishala will be igniting the flame to discuss the bonds formed in the African wild. Sign up to become an explorer and join them by the fire on Sunday, the 28th of February. Wild Earth Explorers. It's in your nature.
So in 1998, we had this idea to go and put a live web camera on a waterhole somewhere in the Sabi Sands next to the Kruger National Park. And I approached just about every single landowner, and everybody thought I was completely crazy until I met Yuri and Pippa Moorman.
We thought it was definitely a fun idea and a worthwhile thing to experiment.
And it immediately became a runaway success. And it gave people all around the world the opportunity to watch a little piece of Africa, day and night. Back in 1998, it was the very early stages of the internet. And all we were able to do was to get a 30-second refreshing JPEG out of that camera. But over time, what we began to do is focus more and more on trying to develop this concept of giving people the opportunity to go on safari.
Even though we live just 500 meters up this hill, we still put the camera on to see what's happening.
Absolutely, we watch it ourselves.
My name is Taylor McCurdy and I work for Eco Training. I love hearing from all of the viewers. However, I particularly enjoy those of you who have been watching for a few years. Your questions are just so advanced and they really get me thinking. If you'd like to ask a question on Wild Earth, you need to register on our website. Once you've done that, head to the live safari page and submit your questions below the live feed.
This is a battle of two great carnivores of the African wilderness. Whew. Whoa! You don't want to be under those jaws. Definitely, this round goes to the lion. Look at that. Fantastic.
Expect the unexpected here on Wild Earth daily.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our coffee stop for the morning. We have decided to switch it up a little bit here on Prylands. We've gone to the other side of Leopard Dam to give you a different perspective of this beautiful watering hole with a gorgeous tree in the middle of frame that has had a fair amount of its bark removed, but also a huge amount has been rubbed and smoothed. The elephants have rubbed their bodies on this wonderful weeping boerbean, the hail boerboon in Afrikaans. Hail is to cry, because the flowers are these beautiful long red flowers that almost seep nectar. And so it's almost as if they were crying with the nectar. And boerboon, it's a farmer's bean, basically. They used to make coffee out of the seed pods, but there are far nicer coffees to be drunk these days. But back in the days, many things were made out of, as we know, natural things out in the wilderness. And a very fitting place to have a coffee underneath the boerboon coffee tree. And you can see where the bark has been removed, and it's very smooth there where it's been rubbed countless times by animals. But I'm just going to sit back for a moment, relax, and just allow you to take in the view with some of the wonderful sounds in the background. hear the galloping call of a sterling wren warbler. Cape turtle dove. Deirdre's cuckoo once again. I do find it hard to sit in silence and not identify the bird calls. I do enjoy it. Sometimes it's nice to just listen and not try and put any identification to it. It really helps to quieten the mind. Our overthinking analytical brain always wants to compartmentalize things. It's okay. Every now and again, it's okay just to listen and let whatever comes come and go. Don't have to identify it. Where I do a lot of my meditation courses down in the Karoo, there's a lot of birds in the center, and I really struggle with that, trying not to identify all the wonderful bird calls. Lucy, the first bird to call in the morning is always going to be the one that's got the best eyesight. And what I've always noticed is it's generally in the summer months the woodland kingfisher. It's normally a first bird to call, but they're not calling as much now as the territory is starting to sort of disappear. So generally the birds that are looking for insect prey have got good eyesight and will be the first ones to call. Birds aren't going to call if they still can't see. No point in going, hey, I'm alive, I'm awake, if I can't see, because clearly you're going to put yourself in danger. There are still nocturnal predatory birds around that could catch you. So from a diurnal bird point of view, I always seem to think it is the woodland kingfisher. But then as winter starts to change, it's hard. I'm trying to think now, because obviously the woodland kingfishers will leave. Then the brown-hooded kingfishers are a little bit more dominant. Of course, you could also hear your crepuscular birds, such as the pearl-spotteds or the scops owl or the barred owlet, if you are in the right area. If you're in Johannesburg, it's probably the hardy-dar ibis. The franklins and spurfowls, normally soon afterwards. Not too early though. They all wait for the light. Bearing in mind in winter, the birds don't call as early because they're still very cold. You know that feeling when you're cold, you remain snuggled up and warm. But in the summer months, they're anything but cold at that time of morning. James wants me to describe pridelands in 3 words. Wow, okay. That's very, very good question, James. Only 3 words. You're really keeping me limited here. Let me think about that for a moment. I mean, one of the words would definitely be grand, because the amount of large trees that I've seen has been incredible. Incredible. It's only been opened to the Greater Kruger for 2 years, maybe close to 3 years now. So there's still an enormous wildness to it. Incredibly wild. There's a whole lot of animals moving in. Establishment of territories is taking place. Grand and wild. And although there are areas that are old farming or old activities which require a little bit of rehabilitation, you find that on any property that's been re-established, there's an incredible wildness to this place. And definitely huge potential once the buffalo herds start moving in and a lot of the other general game like kudu and nyala start moving in, because there's not that many of them around at the moment. We've seen a couple, but then it's also very, very dense and green. So I can't really use dense and green because Djuma outweighs that at the moment. Djuma's far denser and greener and wetter than Pridelands. So grand, wild and convenient would be my 3 words, because we are very close to Hoedspruit. Not that I want to go to Hoedspruit every day, but getting out of Djuma the other day to Hoedspruit took me 2.5 hours, and I think I nearly broke my car in doing so. Johan and I popped into town yesterday for a quick coffee and internet catch-up, and that was nice to get into town. I don't really enjoy going to town that often, but it's nice to know that you can just pop into town and you can be back in 10 minutes, which is really, really nice. So wild, grand and convenient, with also a very rustic nature to it, because there's no established camps on here. Eco Training Camp is very, very back to basics. We're living in tents. We're right up against the water. And although being in the wilderness doesn't always provide the creature comforts, it's very, very grounding to be here. Okay, well, we're going to spend another moment longer reflecting and send you over to Fred, who I think has found something for you.
Well, indeed. What a good surprise this was for us. We're looking now at 2 of the members of the Birmingham Pride, and they were exactly where we expected them to be going. After we were at the den site, their tracks were reported to cross the river and headed in this direction, and luckily one of the other vehicles had found them just as we left that group of wildebeest. And so we are indeed very grateful to find them here. I can't see all of them. They've managed to take a break, and they're resting here in some guarri thickets. All these bushes are magic guarri bushes. There, just at the back, I could see another one lifting up its head, because I was about to say I'm trying to figure out how many there are here. I can see 3 from where we are here, but there should be at least 6 or 7, because the whole pride isn't together at the moment, and I'm pretty sure that the white lions should be in this group as well. But they seem to be just resting at the moment. This young male, you can just see how he's licking himself. And he's actually starting to have a nice mane, I must say. I'm just looking at him now with my binoculars. I can see long eyelashes, quite a prominent blonde mane. That mane is probably going to get darker with age, potentially, for him. Look at the size of those teeth. Oop, just watch their behavior. I don't know if you heard that, but there was one little impala that just snorted. Well, William, it depends on each individual, and you have some males that are fully mature and they've just got a blonder mane, and the brother will have a dark mane. We actually have that here with our lions. But generally, a mane should be probably mature, almost fully developed at around between 5 to 7 years. But that mane will actually continue growing for the rest of their life. And so it is a bit of genetics, but also as a male lion becomes more dominant and he takes over territory, the moment the testosterone levels increase, that actually also adds to a darker mane. And that is actually a quite an attractive thing for a lioness. She might be attracted to a mane that's very dark, because that shows that he's strong, he's dominant, he's powerful. A big mane is also something that can intimidate another lion. I mean, you can imagine if there's new lions coming into an area and the dominant male stands up and he just exposes and shows that big black mane, it can just intimidate any intruder coming in. So I think what happened now was that one lioness got up, and further somewhere in the back, we just heard one impala snorting, almost like a bit of an alarm call. I think there was impala moving through, and maybe they saw one of them resting here and just gave one little snort. Because I don't know when last these lions have eaten, but when that lioness was walking, you could see her stomach looks fairly empty. I think they're quite skinny. So they might be looking potentially to hunt within the next day or so. Often what I've found with these lions is, even when they're looking for food, often when they get an opportunity, they'll literally get to a place where they think this is a good spot to rest for the day, and they'll be resting, and they'll literally just wait for an opportunity to come to them. I've so many times watched warthog walk right up to a pride of sleeping lions. Same thing with wildebeest and impala. And so often they'll just wait for an opportunity to present itself, and if it's there, they might give it a go. But also, the moment that they've been seen, and their presence has been made known to the prey, it's actually almost the hunt is then off. Not all the time, but most of the time, if lions feel that they've been spotted, they've lost the element of surprise, and that's not a very good thing for them. It's your favorite pride. Oh, that is fantastic. I'm very glad to hear that. I must say it's my favorite pride as well at the moment, just because I've been able to see them quite often. And it's so special to be able to follow their story, to watch how they develop and grow and see how they're moving around in the area, being able to watch these new cubs that are now born, watch them grow up, because like I said yesterday, I've been only at Ngala for a year. So I haven't seen most of these lions for the majority of their life. But now the new cubs, the mother with the 3 that we saw yesterday, it was really, really special, because I saw them for the first time when she was just moving them at the den site, when they were still very, very, very tiny. So I think that is a special thing about being in one area for a long time, is that you actually can spend time in an area and watch these animals as they grow and watch how they develop and follow their life story, really. And so, indeed, these are very, very special lions. I think that young male, he's looking now very curious. I think he's trying to he's wondering why these other lions have moved off. There's another lioness, I can just see her through the bushes. She's walked a little bit towards him, and then she just flopped down there. They don't look like they're too keen on getting active. Also, this is, even though it was quite a nice and cool morning, it is turning into quite a hot day. I mean, we can feel it as we're sitting here. And so this is very predictable behavior, what these lions would be doing. They're going into an area where there is good food if they were looking to hunt in the next time. But there's good shade, there's good bushes, they can hide here, and they'll very easily sleep here for the majority of the day and wait for it to cool down till late afternoon, or even until it gets dark, and they might move again or then go look for food. So lions can very easily sleep for 16 to 20 hours of the day. It's actually crazy when you think how much they can sleep. All right. Well, I think in the meantime, we're definitely going to be staying with these lions and see what they get up to and see if anything comes around. And then we're going to be sending you over to Tristan.
Well, while Fred stays with his lions, we are trying to find a pack of dogs. We've found tracks for them. I've done a big loop and I can't find any sign of them coming out. So now I'm just stopping and listening to see if maybe they're on a kill. The reason why is because the tracks that were crossing the main road were crossing at high speed. You could see that they were running across the road. So maybe they were chasing something, and because nothing comes out on any of the other roads that I've driven, it tends to suggest that they've gone static wherever it is that or in these blocks that are on my right hand side. So the tracks that we found were in this direction, coming kind of in mine towards where I am, but no sign of anything. I found a whole bunch of impalas that are relaxed. There's also tracks for a big herd of buffalo that look like they're coming into Djuma too. So there's kind of a whole bunch of stuff going on here, but no sign of the dogs actually exiting this particular block. It's difficult here because, as you can see, the terrain is not exactly open, and we're right on a seep, as is evidenced by these terminalias that you see in the foreground. So this whole area is very, very wet. Lots of water on the roads, which makes tracks really tricky to see, particularly for something like a wild dog, because they have no inhibition when it comes to water. Unlike a lion or a leopard, that often if you've got water on the road, they just kind of skirt it, and you get these beautiful tracks that are just in the mud on the edges of those water areas. With wild dogs, they just run straight through it. So it becomes a lot harder to figure out where exactly they've gone and what their kind of pattern is or where they've headed. But there's a cool little grasshopper that's walking along the dashboard. Fiona, when last did I see the Sands pack? Oh, a long time ago since I saw the Sands pack. It's got a new name now. The guys are calling it the Ottawa pack these days. But this could very well be them. I know that they've been seen on elephant plains a lot the last few days. So I suspect that this is them that's crossed into Djuma. I'm going to just check around this sort of southwestern corner for a bit. If nothing here, I might just head up towards Quarantine in case they somehow crossed through this and I just didn't pick up their tracks. It's very, very possible that that's the case, given how mobile these guys can be. And the kind of tracks look like they were from this morning. So it's definitely, they've been running around now. It's just whether or not we can actually pick them up. Dogs can be very difficult, and it's just me that's in this area. There's nobody else on drive that's anywhere close to this, so it's going to be a tough task. Normally when you have tracks for dogs, you get 2 other vehicles involved and you can close off a whole bunch of routes pretty quickly and blocks pretty fast. But when it's just one person, it's always a lot trickier because you've got to go round and round until such time as you maybe bump into them or hear something or pick up a track again that gives you another better indication of where they're going. But like I say, everything to the sort of east of where I am right now, all the impalas, kudu, duikers, all look very relaxed. None of them look as though they've just been tormented by a pack of dogs. So it makes me suspect that they've either caught something or they've decided they're going to lie up and rest for the day in one of these little blocks off to my right hand side. Look how this is trying to judge distance now, this little grasshopper. I'm sure it's going to jump at some point. Often when you see them moving from side to side like that, because of the structure of their eyes, they don't have very good binocular vision, so judging distance becomes quite tricky. So they bob from side to side just to try and get a better image and more clear kind of understanding of how far they need to go. There we go. See how spring-loaded they are when they jump. All right, let's just continue. There's a little open clearing in front here. So I'll try and check if they're not flying up somewhere here. In the meantime, though, off Steve. Sounds like he's still at a dam and still having a good time watching all kinds of.
We're having a good time. Spending a few more minutes here just listening and absorbing.
Great-titted flycatcher calling. Rattling cisticular as well. I heard a fork-tailed drongo mimicking rattling cisticular the other day, which was very cool to see. Some people might ask, mimics, what do you mean by mimic? Well, birds called songbirds, many songbirds are able to actually take the bird calls or the sounds of other animals and add them into their repertoire. Generally, in a songbird, they're not always the prettiest of birds, and they don't have an amazing display flight or elaborate plumage, or they don't build a fabulous nest like these red-billed buffalo weavers do, or a beautiful nest like the weavers. So they have to sing to their ladies to sort of overwhelm them with bird song. And so I've always liked to use the sort of analogy of a young South African boy going over to Europe and learning to speak Italian and French and getting the Latin down properly, and maybe a little bit of Spanish, any other language. You come back, and obviously the more languages you manage to acquire, the more traveled and experienced you are, aren't you? You can't just learn a language in a couple of days. So the more languages you speak and the more vocabulary you're able to throw out there, the more traveled you are, and hence the longer you have survived. So birds with elaborate bird songs are essentially that well-traveled individual who has seen the world and has overcome all sorts of challenges, and is obviously the desired choice for a lady to go, well, I want your genetics. You have already overcome all the odds, and I want your genetics for my eggs. So that is where bird song comes in, and why some birds can mimic, because they can throw in all sorts of different tunes and sounds to make the ladies be like, oh, he's so well traveled. Listen to all his dialects. Listen to how he's able to impersonate that squirrel and that other bird. The fork-tailed drongo on the far reaches of the spectrum also uses the mimicry to acquire food. I've never seen it personally, but in the Kalahari, they will use it to basically overwhelm surrogates, which means that they will call alarm calls, pretend to be the surrogate, and chase them away and then steal their food. Gunga, well, there could be secretary birds anywhere in the Kruger, but they generally like to be in long grassland, open plains areas. Like the Masai Mara is a really good example. There are areas like that in Kruger that are defined by the soil, where the soil is very, very clay, nutrient-rich clay, prevents a lot of trees from growing there, and so you get these stunted sorts of acacia trees and these long grassland areas, which the secretary bird with their long legs works very well through. And then they nest in those very stunted knobthorn-like acacia trees that are growing in those open plains. But it's not impossible to have one in these areas, but they do choose habitat preference for themselves. So you definitely have to, when you want to find specific birds, you definitely have to go and find the habitat that they are in. And if you've watched our show when we were in the Masai Mara, that is perfect secretary bird habitat. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Favours open grasslands with scattered trees or shrubs. Tyler, well, we did actually. We saw some geese just yesterday, and there were some this morning. The Egyptian geese are actually ducks. I know that sounds very strange, but also bear in mind that ducks, geese, are not only grazers, they're also filter feeders. So they're looking to feed on aquatic vegetation with their beaks in the water. And this watering hole is quite new. Not that it hasn't been established for a while, but it hasn't had a lot of water in it. So there's not an enormous amount of organic material in the water. There's no hippo generating organic material, so there's not as much sort of life
You know, when you look at a very established watering hole like Chitwa, that's got water in it for a very long time. You look at very established lakes where there's huge amounts of diversity. That is due to the fact that that has been established for some time. There's many insects, there's many life forms, there's much organic material, there's lots of nutrients in the soil, with the soils brought in, and that floods the water and causes plant growth. And so many ducks are on the surface, actually feeding on the plant material that's growing either on the surface itself or just underneath. And I don't think this watering hole has had that much time to do so. It will get there though. This will establish itself for a little bit. Definitely going to have water in it for some months to come. That plant material will move up and will sort of start to invade, or grow, should I say. And as the season starts to dry up, these larger permanent water, these larger bodies of water will be the home of many of the aquatic birds in the area once the life forms increase. Hope that makes sense. It's like why we don't see a fish eagle here, why we're not seeing many herons or saddle-billed storks or any of that because they're just not finding the food that they're looking for. Okay, well, we're feeling super relaxed, but we're going to get a move on, and we're going to send you over to Fred, who's with some cats that are very, very relaxed.
All right, we managed to get a slightly different position here. Looked like that young male lion, he got up and decided to find a bush with better shade. But actually with us repositioning to get a nice view of him, we managed to get a nice view of two other lionesses there, some of the younger ones that are lying there in the open. I think they're just a bit more curious at the moment. You can see, I think that Impala or whatever it was at the back that was snorting definitely got their attention. So they keep on looking and listening in that direction. I can just see through the bush. Looks like there's another lioness walking. Was it a young male? I can't see. There's definitely another lion coming. Yes, it's just look with my binoculars. Yeah, it's a young male. You can see a little bit of his mane starting to grow. And you tend to find that the younger ones are more active than the parents. They want to be moving around a bit more. I think they don't need as much sleep. But eventually, if there's nothing really that catches their attention and it starts to get really hot, they'll move out of the clearing there and also get some nice shade that this other male lion has. So far, we've definitely seen at least 4 lions, and I'm pretty sure there's a few more further in there. They've definitely selected quite a nice thicket here to hide themselves in. And I'm really curious and wondering at what stage the pride will actually join up again. Because it was from about 2 months ago when that mother started denning. The pride started sort of splitting up a little bit more. Some of them were there, some of them were there. The older cubs felt a bit more comfortable to go off by themselves for a little bit. The males have moved away, probably patrolling the territory. So it was just really interesting dynamics during that time when she was denning. And so we're sure at some stage they will start to regroup again. But it looks like we've only got, like I said, a few members here at the side of the river. That mother with the 3 youngsters, she's by the riverbed, denning somewhere. Well, not denning anymore. She's with the cubs there. They're moving around. One of the other lionesses is moving as well. We suspect that she's also having cubs. We don't know where she's denning, but we believe it is further south. So there's a potential for some new youngsters as well, which is quite good. And then the 2 males, I think I've only seen one dominant male. It was a few days ago. He wasn't with his brother. That was specifically the one with the dark mane that we did see. So the blonde mane male we haven't seen for a few days now, which is also not strange. On occasion you'll find that the males that are in a coalition will split up. They're not necessarily with each other the whole time, and they're also not with the pride the whole time. Every now and then they'll leave the pride to patrol the territory. And actually this particular pride used to be part of another pride. When they got very big a couple of years ago, I think they were around 26 lions at that stage, and they split off. And there was a breakaway pride that formed in the western side of the reserve. And so the two dominant males, they will often go between those prides and actually spend time at both of them. I think Randall's asking how many teats do lions have, if I heard correctly. So a lioness has 4, actually, which means that they can very, very easily... not teeth. Geez, I'm actually not 100% sure. It's definitely over 30, but I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to do a bit of research to get the exact number there. Good question, though. Okay, Kavita is asking if lions choke on bones. Not that I've seen. I do believe it is possible. I think if they don't chew it small enough, they definitely will be able to choke. But they're so well adapted here, and even though lions aren't nearly as effective as a hyena in actually crunching bones, on occasion lions will eat bones, but specifically it'll be the softer bones. And if it's, for instance, a younger animal, like let's say it was a young Impala or a Wildebeest, those bones are a lot softer. And so those ones, the lions will actually just crunch through them and chew it up and then swallow. Especially even like the edges of the rib cage are normally what lions will chew through, and they'll do it because it's nutrients for them. There's bone marrow inside, so if they can eat all of the bones, they would. But of course, some of them are just too hard. But like I said, I've seen with Impala lambs where lions, they've eaten the whole animal, even chewing pretty much the hooves, because the bones are just so soft, so they can literally swallow all of it. It's only when it gets to larger prey where they leave those bones alone. But I think if it's a young and an inexperienced lion, if it gets a bone and it doesn't break it up correctly, they'll definitely be able, I think, to choke. All right, well, we're still going to be staying with these lions to see if anything is going to happen. In the meantime, we'll send you over to Tristan at Waterhole.
Well, Fred is sitting with his lions hoping something will happen. We've come to this waterhole in the hope that maybe, just maybe, the dogs were around here. Maybe they'd chase something into the water. It's the closest kind of water point to where those tracks are, but yet it's just waterbuck, impalas, and a hippo that is kind of milling about here. Everybody is looking seriously relaxed at this stage. No one is in any way looking too worried about life. And so I expect that the dogs have not passed here. That little baby waterbuck there would have been prime target for wild dogs had they arrived in this section. So everybody would be a lot more panicky if they were here. The weird part is that generally when dogs are in an area and they're moving around, you find the odd animal come flying past you, you smell them, you pick up tracks, but I haven't found anything for them other than those tracks right on the corner that go into a very small block. It's not a very big block at all. So my gut feel tells me that they've gone stationary or they've found themselves a meal inside there. And with the grass being the length that it is, spotting them from the roads is going to be, if they're lying down near impossible. I mean, the other day we had dogs, and it was a perfect example of how difficult they can be to see. Those dogs were 20 meters off the road, and we had zero idea that they were there until one of them stood up. If they're down flat in the way that dogs like to lie, which is kind of with their head over their paws and their ears sort of down, in this grass we'll really struggle to be able to pick them up. So just going to have to keep being patient, keep trying, and eventually, they'll pop out. That's the nice thing about wild dogs, is that they aren't like a lion or a leopard who will kind of go into an area and stay there for long periods. Dogs, typically, once they decide to wake up and in conditions like this with overcast, cool weather, will be fairly active for most of the day. So I'm sure we'll pick them up at some point. Which pack it is, I'm not 100% sure. I actually just got hold of Grant quickly to find out if he knew where all the various packs were, and he was saying to me that so for those of you who don't know who Grant is the researcher for the dogs in the Kruger Park area, and he was telling me that the Impala pack is pushed into Kruger, so that's where that collar is downloaded, is inside Kruger, so it's not them. And he says that the Pungwe pack wasn't too far away, but the collar download hasn't taken place this morning. So the last download was 7 hours ago, and it wasn't that far away. But we also know that the Ottawa Sands pack, according to the guys in the west, which can also be a little bit sometimes sketchy, we're on Elephant Plain. So it's one of those two packs that is in this area. We'll just try and figure out who, and try and, when we find them, be able to kind of work it out and know exactly what's going on. But isn't Treehouse Dam just looking an absolute picture at the moment? So beautiful here now that it's full. Bella, no, not really. While waterbuck have the name waterbuck, it's not generally to do with the fact that they require huge amounts of water to drink. They just generally are close to water, and that's where the name has kind of come through. But in terms of which antelope requires the most water, hoofed animal would be buffalo, probably. They need to drink regularly. But antelope species, I don't know, actually. It's a tricky one. I'm not 100% sure who would require the most water. I think they all pretty much need water multiple times a day. You see all of the antelope coming down to water regularly. Impalas particularly, find them coming down a lot during the course of the day. A herd will go, drink, come back, go back into the shade, come back and drink. So I think they're all pretty equal in their kind of need for water, and conditions often play a part as to how much water they take on in a period of time. Very, very hot conditions, typically you find animals drink a lot more. You see how wary they are, though. They're wary because of this hippo. So these guys are almost under the impression that that hippo could potentially be a crocodile. They're not used to disturbance on this particular waterhole. There's not normally things floating about in here. So you'll find that they're just a little bit wary of what's going on. Even the Egyptian geese have been giving them a little bit of cause for concern. You find they watch those Egyptian geese carefully as they go. Yes, they can. They actually swim pretty well. It's just that generally these animals, it's a last resort for them to go into the water to swim. Ultimately, you've got crocodiles in Africa, and crocodiles are very, very dangerous animals, and normally any animal that enters into water where crocodiles are close by he's going to have a tough time of it. But yes, they can swim. I've seen them swim pretty well. To give you an idea of how well they swim and how long they swim for, I had a sighting of wild dogs, funny enough, chasing an impala into a dam. And that impala, shame, the poor animal, she eventually died, but it swam for over 3 hours, round and round and round and round and round and round and round, pretty efficiently as well. And it eventually actually had a heart attack by the looks of it, because it was swimming and then it was getting more and more exhausted. The head was starting to dip below water, kept swimming, and all of a sudden it just kind of rolled onto its side and its legs kicked and it was done. So I don't know if it just died of sheer exhaustion. It definitely didn't drown, and nothing else grabbed it, and it then eventually floated to the edge and the dogs took it after a hippo had played with it and thrown it about a bit when it was dead. So they do swim well. Waterbuck as well. I mean, they're not designed to be fast swimmers. They'll never swim as fast as something like a crocodile will. They don't have the right structure to them. Those little hooves are small in comparison to their body, which doesn't push a lot of water, but they are able to traverse watery areas by swimming if they really, really have to. It's a last resort for these guys. Alright, well, let's carry on. Let's do another loop up towards quarantine, see if maybe we pick up any sign of these dogs. Hopefully they'll have emerged by now.
It's no secret that nature can heal. Some of our Wild Earth viewers are finding solace in the outdoors close to their homes during lockdown.
This is how I keep myself busy during lockdown. Beautiful little jumping spot.
I love walking in the open spaces near my home. Provides a moment of peace in a crazy world.
This is my fire escape with some of the birds I get to see. That's what it's like in New York City during lockdown.
Being in nature helps me to cope with the challenges of life and helps me to be humble and grateful.
It's magical watching everything turn into a winter wonderland as the snow softly falls.
Been doing lots of walking, dog walking, outside at parks.
This is my Ridgeback Drake. Our little slice of paradise is a provincial park called Hopewell Ross.
Connecting with nature is critical to stay positive during these tough times. Wild Earth encourages you all to find time to escape to nature.
The reason why we see that wildebeest by himself is because he's a male, or a bull, as we typically would call him. And what he does is that he marks and defends an area. Essentially, he is looking for the ultimate piece of land or prime property. Needs to have good grazing, needs to have a water source close by. And not too far away from here, there's a sickle bush thicket that would provide just enough shelter from the wind and the rain.
My name is Lauren, and I'm currently working in Djuma Private Game Reserve here in South Africa. I love answering your questions during the live safaris. It's my favorite part. It feels like you're on the vehicle with me, and I'm able to teach you exactly what you want to know. If you want to ask a question on Wild Earth, then you need to register on our website. Once registered, you must go to the live safari page and ask your question below the live feed.
Looks like it's a very difficult climb because every time it tries to climb, the ground is breaking, so it slides down. But it's the only one. Look at that. That is the call of desperation with a cub. It's like, what are you doing, mommy? Oops! Oof!
Expect the unexpected here on Wild Earth daily.
Right, well, we're still with these lions, and as you can see, not much has changed. Positions are still the same. I think if we have to imagine a theme for this group, it probably would be lazy Sunday afternoon, although it's just a Thursday today. But for them, every day has got some resting in like this. But I was just thinking a little bit earlier, you know, we've actually got a lot of clouds coming in from our south. and it's actually not as hot as it was yesterday, which actually is quite nice. So generally you'll find that lions, when it is nice and cool and they are really looking to move, they'll make use of this. And so I think if at some stage they wanted to either get to another part of their territory within some time during this day, even now, it's not that hot, they actually can go. But the weather here does change quickly, so from bright and sunny it can really just go to almost dark and thunder showers. But either way, Melissa, I couldn't agree more with you. It is always nice to see them all together. Like I said, we're all wondering when that would be, but we're sure it will be sometime in the near future, hopefully. But it's not unnatural for lion pride to go through these times where, they splitting up and moving around and joining up with others and going off to themselves, and it's all part of their life as a pride. But it's going to be exciting when the mothers bring the cubs to join up with the pride, and we're expecting in at least soon that the lioness with the 3 cubs at roughly about 2 months of age now, that they're going to be joining up with the pride soon. They've already started to eat. Yesterday we saw them for the first time eating meat, which is great. So really hoping that we will see them all together. But for the time being, I think these lions are going to be just resting here. Doesn't look like they're too active. There's some white crested helmet strikes there in the background jumping around, which seems to have gotten the attention of one of the younger ones. And I think for them, if there is a chance just to try and catch a little bird or a mouse, they'll definitely do it. I think it's more playing for them than it is really trying to get it for food, but it's just them honing their instincts. So I think that's definitely what they'll be doing for the day. But they're going to be resting here and in the shade. But what a lovely way to actually be ending our drive today. And I just want to thank all our viewers for joining us today. Stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you on our next safari. Until then, cheers for now.